Alright everyone, it's been a very long time since I did a VOD review of a pro player, but this match looks like it's going to be pretty okay. We have Apdo going up against Ed, who is actually on a champion that he's definitely comfortable on, even though he's not a mid laner himself. Mid Jayce is a real thing, and Ed is definitely a very worthy opponent, so we'll just be reviewing the VOD from Apdo's perspective. TwistedFate versus Jayce matchup. Skip past the loading. It's running exhaust, obviously just for the laning phase, getting through that, but then obviously it'll have potency later on. The Doran's ring and 2 cookies is because he does have potency inside of trades early on. And Jayce is going to have to respect ganks against a TwistedFate early on. Fortunately, though, it looks like Fizz might end up giving up First Blood. I'm not entirely sure. We can see if there's an NA Lee Sin. Oh, and Apdo wasn't totally paying attention. He just gets in one auto attack, but then ends up taking the worst end of the trade. That gold card followed up by auto is definitely a mistake. Can't do anything about the Huya things that pass across the screen, so just deal with me. He's forced to recall, but he doesn't lose out too much on it. Now minions have spawned. Looking at the team compositions, though, okay, so he's going to come in here. Yeah, all right. Not able to get the gold card onto Jayce, otherwise he would die. He sees Lee Sin and Galio doing red, and he spam pings it. I think it's pretty nice if they can actually disrupt this. Remember, Fizz has quite a lot of strength early on, and now they're going to actually be forced to disengage. So Apdo, if we look at this, right, I'm sure that what he's thinking is, hold on, Fizz has Ignite, right? Yeah, Fizz has Ignite. I'm sure what he's thinking is they want to try to beat Lee Sin to the punch. I think that this is probably an ideal situation if Fizz would cast Ignite, and then Apdo can continue on with the trade, because they also have the exhaust, then they can get out through the right-hand side jungle, and Fizz can still make it up to top lane relatively, without a problem, relatively quick. The thing, though, is that Apdo is going to be behind in mid lane, but setting the jungler behind and getting the top laner ahead, I think is a much more worthwhile investment, given the fact that the TwistedFate versus Jayce dynamic, if Jayce is playing correctly, it's already going to be a difficult matchup, especially given the 2v2 dynamic of the Lee Sin Jayce versus the TwistedFate Zac. So if he can actually get his jungler stronger than Lee Sin and take away from that 2v2 dynamic, then it's going to be beneficial for him. But unfortunately, they can't actually follow up the trade, and so now Apdo and Fizz both fall really far behind. All the minions end up dying, so Apdo's down quite a lot. He auto-attacks him, and you'll notice the range at which he auto-attacks him, so the minions and the way that they aggro. It's not like they hold on to him too long, otherwise the trade would be not ideal. Zac is immediately coming into mid, and he throws the red card, and now all that they're looking for is they know that Jayce doesn't have his flash. He uses the cleanse, and that was a... I mean, that's just really weird, I think, no matter how we look at it. Zac autos. He autos. This auto attack should not have... If that auto wasn't sent, like, this is... No matter how you look at this, this is a mistake from Apdo. If that auto attack wasn't sent and he locks gold card and he targets Jayce, they kill him, and then it doesn't matter what Lee Sin ends up doing. Especially if he has his cookie popping or going, and then Zac has his passive. Lee Sin's not going to be able to do anything here. So I don't totally understand what the thought process is here, unless they're assuming that Lee Sin's just go back and look at this. Thunderlord, I'm pretty sure that they just kill him, even through Lee Sin's shield, if Lee Sin gets there in time. That's basically the thought process that's going through his head, though, is the shield from Lee Sin great enough to stop the gank. Ends up gold carding, and now the lane is actually in a fantastic position. And the other thing about this is that Now, remember, at level 1, Apdo lost out on XP. Now what's ended up going on is that Ed and Lee Sin are going to end up sharing a lot of XP on this wave, and Zach is going to be out of range by the time Apdo begins to CS. So Apdo's actually going to skew the experience in his favor. Just making sure that everything's good, and he shows that he wants to hold the lane here. Because if you end up just shoving this wave immediately, right? If you shove this immediately, then your wave just goes back into the middle and you don't have any intel on what Ed's doing. So if Ed actually ends up staying, you took a pretty, you took a lot of HP damage, and yes, you're gonna have your potions, but when you think about their recall timers and like what Twisted Fate needs to be effective versus what Jayce needs to be effective, you really have to calculate in the gold. And so if he would push this right back immediately, what ends up happening is that it sets up for like a level 4 recall. And that's not something that he can afford right now, because Jayce would get way too much benefit out of that. And then on top of that, it would be difficult for Apdo to sustain until level 6 without Ed getting a lot of value. So you can see that he's holding the lane in a position that also applies pressure from the jungle, because Apdo, due to the dynamic of the matchup, benefits from having the lane underneath his turret, even though Jayce is a poke champion and can obviously hit him with some EQs and stuff. So Ed is just hard shoving in the wave. And now the lane resets, and you can see that Apdo is looking for intel on where is Jayce. And at this point, now that we've hit the 400 mark, it's now a pretty stable time to recall, especially because the cannon wave just ended up coming, and you know that Zach is not going to have any route that entertains mid lane, and it's too early on in the game that he's going to actually get ganked again by Lee Sin, considering the route that we know that Lee Sin took early on and how the 2v2 played out. So ideally, he's going to shove this and then recall immediately. If he doesn't do that, then I think this is really, really weird, because it's going to be very difficult to sustain back up to a point where he would be comfortable. Ed ends up staying. This is either going to just be a ward timing and stay because Ed ends up staying, or he just recalls. I think if Ed doesn't show, he ends up recalling here because he's able to just get a second door on his ring, and he's able to get a control ward. Zach shows in bottom. The one thing that's on his mind, though, is that he knows that Jayce still doesn't have flash, so even if Lee Sin would show up for some reason, he's still pretty much safe, because there's no way for Jayce to get into a position where he can use the hammer to knock him back. You can see that Ed is just basically playing a mind game. And now here comes Zach. Apdo's still holding gold card, but the lane is actually pushing into Apdo. Zach is pinging him. Yeah. Easy kill. And now Zach should just let Apdo push by himself. And Lee Sin ends up showing up. So like right here, what should have ended up happening is Zach should have just gone over to the left-hand side, because he just came from the right-hand side, right? And again, because of Lee Sin's initial route, it's unlikely that Lee Sin would come from the right-hand side. Like, so if the information of Zach coming from the right wasn't enough, it's further reinforced by the fact that Lee Sin should never be coming from the right-hand side from a jungle point of view, and the fact that, what just happened in bottom lane. So all that Zach should do right here is after the kill onto Jayce, he wants to get TF further ahead and get him to that level 6 mark, and then just make sure that Apdo is as far ahead as possible. So after the kill, Zach should immediately just go over here and then posture. And what can end up happening is Lee Sin might come around here and then try to do something, but then Zach is waiting, but at least he's out of experience range. I think that the decision to shove together is quite poor. Now, he could have escort shoved for Apdo, and what I mean by that is if he went over into the brush and then Apdo couldn't shove fast enough relative to Jayce coming back up and then running back into mid lane and enabling Ed to get a favorable position in the lane with lane manipulation, then Zach could actually come back in and attack the minions but not actually tax them. Taxing Apdo at this stage of the game would be a pretty big mistake. Right here, he gets Ninja Tabby, and it looks like he's going to pick up Refillable. And I think that what he's doing here is he's valuing the mobility that he has over Jayce, because you know that Jayce still doesn't have summoners. So the mobility and the durability, I guess, that he's going to be granted inside of the laning phase outweighs like the Catalyst of Aeons or like a Blasting Wand or like a Sheen or anything like that. And you can see that Apdo, he's just taking a peek. And this is something that you need to do if you're a laner. Whenever you're coming back to lane, just take a look at things, because it tells you a lot, right? Let's just take a look at bottom for like 1 second when he looks there, right? So right here, when you see the position of this wave, all right, it gives you a lot of intel, right? Because you know that bottom lane is level 3, right? Level 3, level 4. And you can basically guess what their gold value is right now, and that gives you an idea of when they're going to plan their recall timer. It gives you an idea of, you know, what is their mana, what is their HP, what are they likely to keep doing inside of this laning phase at this point. And it lets you dictate, you know, what is likely to be the enemy jungler route, or what is the enemy jungler thinking. Because let's say that both of these bottom lane champions were, let's say that Apdo was actually red side, and these were his red side teammates, and they were both really low HP. If everything was still in the fog of war, then there's a chance that, you know, you might entertain that the enemy jungler might actually go down into bottom. And then let's say that Apdo has like teleport available, or, you know, he already is level 6 and he can Destiny Gate. These are things that he could be thinking about. And now when you see Lee Sin appears in golems, you can see he doesn't even really change his direction despite having flash. And he would have a, well, no, he wouldn't have exhaust available. I thought that was just a 4, but it was a 44. They end up getting the kill. And the only reason now that he changes direction is because, watch this. As he arrives at the lane is already favorable. The lane is already pushing into Apdo. Okay, so he gets to the lane, and then he realizes that Ed made the decision to actually continue to go up. So now if Ed's going to get any kills in this spot, it's likely to be from him coming around here and getting a kill here, or it's going to come up here, and then it's going to be an EQ shock blast inside of anything in one of these lines, right? This would probably be the cutoff line, and then it's as wide as any of these, right? If that's going to be the case, then that likely means that Ed moves up to here, or he even moves into this narrow corridor. Given that angle, Apdo can get a flank off, and then given Zach's HP and what's likely to be the 2v2 strength of the Galio and the Jayce against, let's say, Zach plus TwistedFate, Apdo would be able to win with Zach from that standpoint, because you have to remember that Ed would be on cooldown. So he follows because he wants to know exactly what's going on. You notice that he binks the ward in and then clicks back immediately. That's because Jayce could just be waiting to try to chunk him. And now you see that Jayce is actually electing to go backwards, throws the gold card, hits him, procs the Thunderlord, and then he runs for his life. And he has the Ninja Tabby, so this isn't the end of the world. And now you can see that he's trying to do the dance. So there's an auto attack range between both of these champions, and if he can get the dance right, as soon as Ed would click backwards, Apdo, when his W would come back up off cooldown, he could try to poke back in another gold card and then another wild card. And then from there, what ends up happening is with the yellow trinket, he could be right here, pink the trinket into the brush, and then he can move down actually to basically tell Ed, fuck you, you're not coming into the lane, and then he can use this to further control and establish lane dominance in terms of XP. Ed ends up missing the Shock Blast, and he lets Ed back into the lane because he doesn't have a ward on that side. And again, this lane is favorable to him because you can see the HP of these minions, and this lets you know that Apdo is going to be able to lock the wave in a position like this. He's going to be able to get this position. And because you know that Jayce doesn't have lane control and lane initiative, and you think that, you know, exhaust is going to be coming up soon, you still have flash, and you're still a little bit ways away from level 6, this is going to be a favorable spot, again, because it applies a lot of pressure to Lee Sin and to Jayce. It creates the best potency for you relative to your jungler. And then on top of that, if your jungler would gank and Lee Sin would show up, it's a long lane where then Jayce and Lee Sin are pressed to get the lane into turret, thus playing into the defensive stance that Apdo has. So right here, you can see that line. It's not quite like that, but and there's no reason to give this line up. And you can just see that he's letting the cards rotate. And he even elects not to hit that minion. I don't think that was... Actually, I don't know if that was intentional, but it definitely could have been because he didn't want it to CS the minion exactly, and he's just trying to continuously set this up. You can see now that as Ed gets the clear-cut push on him, relative to the minion wave that he would get in mid lane, it's too far away. So Apdo can't tank this. All right, if this minion wave was right here, there would be no reason to throw the red card because then these minions would actually come up sooner and then the lane continues to lock again, and you can use that as a tool to pressure Jayce's mana. But unfortunately, Apdo didn't have the luxury of doing that, and now the lane resets. And now the question that you have to have for yourself is, Jayce goes into the Fog of War. Apdo already knows that he's very close to getting level 6. He knows that because of Zach's positioning and the way that Jayce just went, the only thing he would really have to be afraid of is if Lee Sin came out from either exactly right here or if Lee Sin came around. But that's going to be unlikely that Lee Sin's going to be able to get around because you have the ward right there and then you have Zach coming anyway. So given the fact that you have Exhaust, Flash, and you have Gold Card readily available to you, you're pretty much safe from any sort of shenanigans like a sandwich that Lee Sin and Jayce would try to attempt onto you. So with that being considered, you know that you're going to get level 6, and you're holding on to a pretty good amount of gold, and you don't really have too much more potency inside of lane. Like if this laning phase keeps up for 2 more minutes or something, your HP is going to be hurting if trades continue to occur, and your mana pool isn't quite as high as you'd like it. So when Jayce goes into Fog of War, you just want to get this lane out of your sight as fast as possible, and then you can look to make a decision. And that's that like little sandwich that I was talking about. So Ed lands the Shock Blast, and Ed puts a ward up and forward so that he's able to see exactly where Apdo goes. And again, it's just it's more focused towards the defense and the utility. He realizes that he doesn't need to actually beat Jayce in lane because of the Twisted Fate Zac dynamic, but also because he realizes that the value that he's going to get out of Twisted Fate, especially in these matchups, right? Like when you think of the 2 team compositions, you have to think about like what he's thinking relative to the mid game and what it means for the late game and stuff. It's really important for him to accelerate his teammates ahead, and he can just do that by building tanky and utility wise rather than going for like the offensive with Catalyst of Aeons and Blasting Wand. Yeah. So he still doesn't have enough info for what he wants to do. And you can see he just takes a peek at bottom because he wants to see if it's going to be diveable. He sees that Lee Sin shows up in top lane on the minimap, but he elects to dive anyway. Because after activating the ultimate, like this is what I'm talking about. And now, with the items that he has as well, let's say that he was tanking the turret or something. He would get a lot more value out of doing so because he has the Ninja Tabi and he has the Ruby Crystal. His teammates don't need him to have damage in these specific, particular spots. So now right here, you can see that he was going to possibly go up through mid lane like that, but Jayce didn't appear yet, so he ends up just taking the safer route. He might even eat the fruit here. Yep, he's going to eat the fruit. He might even attack Scuttle Crab. Depends what tier Scuttle is. He only goes up to full HP, doesn't actually need the mana. He can replenish that with blue card. And he's looking at the lane as he's coming to it. And right now, I think that all he wants to do is apply psychological pressure to Jayce. That's why he gets up the gold card, is because he thinks that Jayce maybe doesn't have any intel on Zac. And now he's just trying to CS as best as he can. And now, yet again, this is one of those situations. Jayce goes into Fog of War. He can't assume what Jayce is going to do, but also he's holding a lot of gold and he definitely wants to recall. The only thing that he could do here is he has one of 2 situations. If Fizz doesn't die and Fizz was able to get further back, and you know that Jayce is moving up and you see Zac right here, there's a chance that he looks at all of this going on, and then he maybe evaluates, can I help out with gold cards plus my refillable and the amount of mana that I have? Alternatively, he can push this wave in that Ed is going to miss, and maybe he can even make Ed miss the next wave, right? So then you end up having 12 CS get missed. So 12 CS is X gold, and then it's also X XP, right? Like experience. And then he can actually put this as a higher priority than Fizz maybe dying or Zac maybe dying or something. Because we also know that Rift Herald isn't available, and that kill is not going to convert on anything. The other alternative, like I said, is he just shoves in the lane, and then he just immediately recalls. So right here, he's trying to just bait with him, and the reason that he's doing this is because, again, if you can tether that range, get another gold card off, maybe he makes Ed lose 2 CS. So right here, his mana pool is extremely low, and he knows that he's not going to be getting any help from Zac. So all he has to do is play on the left-hand side, because that's where his ward is, and it's unlikely that Lee Sin would come from the left-hand side. And all he needs to do is get the lane shoved in and not get dove. If there's ever really going to be a dangerous spot that Apdo's in right now, it would be right now. The thing that's really interesting here is he already has enough gold clearly for Catalyst of Aeons, and you have to wonder if he's just intentionally trying to sustain into Catalyst of Aeons plus Blasting Wand for his Roa. And that might actually be what he's trying to do. This is a really greedy play, but now he's able to get away with it because he sees Lee Sin appears on Dragon. He's still way too healthy for Ed to be able to kill him because Ed has no combat spells, he just has the cleanse. And given the position that Apdo's playing from, he's relatively safe. Now, with the Dragon having gone down, we have to take a look at what time the Dragon went down. Went down at 9:25, right? Assuming that Lee Sin was standing right here when he killed the dragon, right, getting ready to leave the pit, Apdo now has to pay attention, and he has to predict the path that Lee Sin could take through the jungle. You can also see that Zac is now moving down to perhaps get into position to counter gank Lee Sin, because if there is going to be a timing where Apdo's susceptible, it's right now after that Shockblade landed. You can see that Apdo just pushed the lane, and he had no intention of following up with this Zac, because I'm sure that he recognizes that Lee Sin can be here a pretty high amount of times. This is also going to be a scenario now where Zac is going to be able to shove in the lane and none of the CS... There it is. Okay. So Zac doesn't understand, I think, what's going on. If Zac did understand what was going on, Zac would have just stayed there, and then once Apdo backs up, Zac comes here and he just eats the wave so that no XP or gold goes to waste. This is another spot where Zac is trying his best to defend the turret. And you can see now that Apdo almost... Okay, well, holy shit. Alright, yeah, alright, bye, Lee Sin. Jesus. Alright. So that was Ed and Lee Sin trying to just get the turret as fast as possible. Apdo's team composition benefits a lot from blitzing ahead. And if you can take away TwistedFate's mid lane turret, it becomes a lot easier to constrict him. And now all that Apdo's doing is he's paying attention to the minimap as the death timers release. Because right now what you can do is you can actually track Ed through the Fog of War. So like Ed is probably right here right now. He should show up on the minimap in like 2 seconds. There he is. So he shoves in the lane, he recalls, and he just picks up the Roa, or the Roa components. And some people might be wondering here, why pick up the Amplifying Tome? You know, you only need 200, 300 gold for Roa. When you think about what he needs and the current state of the map, yeah, he's going to have ultimate available to him, but he's likely going to be using his ultimate like when it comes up immediately. And so because of that, he doesn't have any time to recall into Roa, because if he just holds the gold for Roa, then he'll end up having excess gold. So he immediately buys the next recipe component item that he's going to need. Right here, he's looking down at bottom lane. He also sees that they want to push in mid lane, and this is a really tense moment, actually. Mid lane turret isn't low enough to the point where Jayce and Lee Sin can just threaten him. He knows that Jayce and Lee Sin are potentially going top lane. Hawkshot comes out, and you can see that he defensive pings Fizz, and he's just staying defensive because he can't know exactly what is going on. He might ward over into Wraiths. Never mind, he sees Lee Sin, and he sees that the trade is going on. He might actually... Okay, that would have hit, but doesn't matter in the end. So now he's gonna just push this in. He's just playing safe because there's no reason, there's no point for him to actually stick around. And that's why he's just not shoving it super, super quick. Now after he shoves it in, you can see that he still needs some gold for Roa, but there's no reason for him to have intention to stay onto the turret. He doesn't get any value from getting turret damage right now. It just ends up giving a lot of map pressure and a lot of control, because he's able to apply a lot of pressure and control just by moving into the Fog of War. Now he knows that Tahm Kench is here, so it doesn't really matter if anyone would show up, because he's feeling really confident knowing that he's able to just have an emergency exit. Ed doesn't seem to really know about Tahm Kench, and so now Apdo is going to move forward. Ed gets the cleanse off, and it doesn't really matter. Apdo now going to turn his attention towards trying to save Tahm Kench, and they end up getting the kill onto Ed. And now he's going to get the fuck out, and he might end up dying here, actually. No, nice flash. All right. So picks up the Roa. Now he's just going to take a peek at maybe what's happening. That way he can know to ping Ashe. Like right now, you can obviously tell that Ashe is in danger, because if they keep moving into the Fog of War, then they're right here. And even though Ashe has her ultimate available, it's not enough. They could easily just dive her underneath the turret, unless they respect Twisted Fate ultimate and Tahm Kench ulti. But it looks like that's not going to be the decision that they're making. Instead, it looks like they were just going to go for Apdo's blue, and now they're going to pay the price for it because they were too indecisive and they didn't act as a unit. And so now Apdo runs up mid lane. He has his ultimate available. He still has exhaust as well. Fizz tries to go for the kill onto Xayah. They know that Fizz now is also going to be getting his split push. Now he knows that he can use his ultimate because they effectively won the fight. He doesn't really need to use exhaust here. He could exhaust Lee Sin now if he really wanted to. But instead, Tahm Kench ends up using it first. And now immediately he recognizes that, hey, my teammates don't actually need me to pressure this turret. They don't need me to stay here. I can immediately get more things done. So he runs into mid lane. He's going to pick up this CS wave. He's going to pick up this wave, apply pressure to this turret, and then depending on who reacts to top lane, Apdo might react to top lane. But the thing that you have to be paying attention to here is, like, how does Jayce move into the Fog of War? Because Jayce doesn't elect to continuously keep pushing top lane, there's no incentive to go top. The only thing that he has to consider is that Jayce might actually come from behind, and that's what that camera movement actually, I think, is suggesting. Watch, the little subtle movement. Right here. This is basically the exact time where Ed would be right here, or he would be right here. And so the timing in which Apdo moves up his screen, I think, is near perfect. And that's just something called, Fog of War tracking. Just tracking an enemy through the last time they moved into the Fog of War, knowing where can they go, what can they do. The only other thing is that Ed could have maybe tried to take the red. That would have been a possibility. And now he's just trying to pressurize Ed because he realized that he came off of a recall. And since the champion just came off of the recall, it's likely that he's going to be on the map for a while, so why not try to damage him as much as possible. Comes over now to pick up his blue buff. This is actually a mistake. It's not important to pick up the blue immediately, but it looks like he wants to immediately move into bottom lane. And the only thing that you can think when you see this is that Apdo wants a greedy buy. It's the only thing that you can really gather from this. Because his ultimate is still 85 seconds away, so it's not really like he's applying too much split push pressure. What he is doing, though, is he is restricting and condensing the map. But all that it does is it draws an opponent to him rather than Apdo actually threatening any of the turrets, because he doesn't have enough value, right? Like, these champions just came off of recalls. Apdo is still pooling 2,300 gold. He needs to recall in order to get, item strength, in order to really threaten someone, even if they're underneath the turret. The only chance that they have here is if Tahm Kench ultis in with Apdo. But instead, Ed missed the Shockblade. Yep, and there it is. That's basically the only situation that you can get away with this. They don't end up getting the kill. I think that's completely fine. This is actually more so on Tahm Kench. But this is a play that doesn't need to happen. This is actually Ed making a mistake. Ed should recognize that Apdo doesn't have any value to actually pressure the turret, because you also look at the minimap for Ed's team, and this is the minimap, right? So when this is actually the case, okay, he's not doing like a rock symbol or something with his pinky and index finger. He should just let this wave actually come in, kill all of these minions, and then CS it. But he's probably tilted because his teammates are bonobos. So right here, Tahm Kench is coming, but you can see the other thing here is Tahm Kench pings that Apdo that he's on the way, but Apdo actually makes the decision to go before Tahm Kench pings. And I think this is just being able to trust your teammates that they're high enough elo to be able to make plays like this. So now that they kill the wave, he can just shove this in, and then he can look for a recall. Shove one more wave, but then when Lee Sin ends up dying, it offers the possibility to actually push one more wave. And the reason that I say that is because if they try to, they can't just send one person to deal with Apdo, because of the gold card and the fact that he still has exhaust up, and he's just pretty tanky because of the Roa and the Ninja Tabi. Okay, you can't send Galio, which then means that you would have to send Jayce plus X, and sending two people at this point in the game removes way too much pressure on the map, and it opens up Apdo's team to be able to do a lot on the left-hand side. Apto's staying still in bottom lane. And Ed doesn't have a Hex Drinker. And Ed is just taking trades completely needlessly. Doesn't respect the fact that Apdo has exhaust. And now Ed ends up dying. But these are trades that don't need to happen. This is Apdo getting rewarded by Ed being an idiot, not by Apto's own creation, right? He gives them the chance to hang themselves, and Ed does hang himself, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. Ed could have very easily have just stayed back here and then waited for teammates, and then in which case, if Apdo ends up staying, all that Apdo can do is he can stand at this point and he can shove the wave in, but beyond that, he doesn't actually offer anything. So basically, what you can consider now is because of the way that rubber banding works and XP and all that other good jazz, if Apdo actually stays here and then Ed stays here and they just let the two minion waves collide, because Apdo has no ability to actually pressure the turret and it's not doing anything else for the game because it's just a 1-to-1, and Apto's value for his team is technically higher than Ed's right now, it would end up being beneficial to Ed. But Ed ends up hanging himself. Now they're gonna get rewarded, and Apdo just ends up recalling, picks up Lichbane. Now he has a lot of potency, and that's the type of greeting that I was talking about earlier. He just wanted to greed straight into the Lichbane, because now what ends up happening is, let's say that he recalled before 2 minutes ago, and all that he had was Sheen plus Aether Wisp or something, or like Sheen Aether, right? What ends up happening is he still has potency, but he doesn't have the ability to basically offer like an ultimatum, you know, where if the team goes 5-on-4 onto his team, they have to get a clean ace, because if they don't get a clean ace, what ends up happening is Apdo threatens the raising of 2 turrets. If he just has a Sheen and an Aether Wisp, he can only threaten 1 turret and then damage on the second one before they'd be able to respond. It's not a high enough threat. And so he wanted the Lichbane exactly for this purpose, because now he threatens so much, and it really restricts what the enemy team is allowed to do. Enemy team seems extremely uncoordinated though, so I don't think that it matters too much. Keeps moving into him. Yep, it's all over. Yep. He just lets them hang themselves. And they do it. So now, obviously, the decision is just to stay down here because you have Lichbane. So now you can get the turret. Galio has really nice wave clear, but doesn't really matter. Lichbane. And you have the red buff on Fizz. Fizz ends up going in. Gets the gold card off on Galio. Turns out Galio doesn't take damage. I don't know what Zach's doing. Zach's an idiot. We already established earlier, though, that Zach's an idiot. And Zach. Alright. Teleport being used by Fizz to save Zach. This is a really bad fight. You can see that Apto's just trying to do what he can. Gold card's the minion. Really bad mistake. And he's just trying to get whatever he possibly can right now. He ends up getting hooked. Gets pulled away by Tahm Kench. Throws the red card because they're all clumped up. Gets the value out of that. And the enemy team kept pushing on, and they got punished for their mistake. So, looking at the minimap right now, they still have minions. The death timers are pretty high. They might be able to get a turret. Actually, they might be able to get both. No, wait. No, yeah, just one. Yeah. They can get one and they can get half HP on this, I think, before Galio would... Alright, Galio doesn't care. They could get one and then they can get half HP or like 40% HP on this if Galio plays it right. Galio will lose like I think 70% of his HP in doing so, but then Thresh spawns and then Apdo and everyone is actually out of position, and it ends up creating a scenario in which they get aced. They could potentially throw away Baron, even though Tahm Kench has ultimate and Apdo would have ultimate. It doesn't matter at the end of the day because Fizz doesn't have teleport, and Fizz is not going to be able to threaten a Baron prevention or something solely by himself. And this is just an example of them, you know, trying to steal Lee Sin's jungle. They know that like right now, there's no potential for them to try to run up mid, run top, and then try to do some sort of a Baron play. That shit only works in NA. So right now they can actually just steal all of Lee Sin's red side jungle, and then they can look for a reset. And then after the reset, they know they have super minions down and bottom against one Nexus turret. What the fuck? Okay. They have super minions down and bottom against one Nexus turret, so then it becomes really, really easy to do like a 1-4-0 and then control and restrict the area inside of the Lee Sin blue side jungle and then use that to get a Baron. In this game, it was really interesting to see because Apdo does a lot of things that are only... he's doing a lot of things that require the opponent to hang themselves, and they do end up doing it. And you can attribute that to a read on the players, because that's basically how he chooses to play the game, is through pure reads. He gets the blue buff, he gets red, and even though some people are probably wondering right now, you know, why have Apdo go bottom? Well, the reason that you have Apdo go bottom is because the only person that can really react to him right now is going to be Galio. Ed can't react to him in the current state. Apdo also goes for the pseudo Magi's, which is Ludens, because people probably are thinking right now, oh, Apdo went Magi's LS. Let me tell you why he went Magi or Ludens Echo. Ludens is the pseudo Magi's Soul Stealer. When you're really, really far ahead and you're creating tons of pressure and your opponents can't really react to it, obviously the mobility and the small spike that this is going to grant you, especially against opponents that aren't respecting how much magic damage you're dishing out, is going to be beneficial. If they weren't in a position like this, where, you know, the bottom lane inhibitor is exposed, Baron is a real, you know, threat potential, and his team is so far ahead, etc., he wouldn't get Ludens Echo. This is being used as a Magi's Soul Stealer. And it's sort of like when you get Magi or Ludens Echo on like Vladimir and, you know, other champions like that. So he's going bottom lane, and the reason that he's going bottom lane again is because he can threaten backdoor, because the only person that can stop him is actually Galio. So if Galio tries to stop him, it's also very easy for Apdo to kite him out with the Ludens and the Lichbane, plus the fact that he also has red buff, so he has that going for him. And Galio's not actually going to be able to kill TF unless someone else comes back. So what can end up happening is Galio can try his best to prevent Apdo from getting to that lone 1 turret, but if Apdo actually brings the minions up to that lone 1 turret, he can then begin trying to use Lichbane procs and hitting the turret, and then he can just shred right through it. So offer that in with his Destiny Gate ultimate. Any scenario in which they send 2 people to deal with Apdo, it opens up for the possibility to have a 4-man go on to Baron. So most people would probably be thinking to themselves, okay, you know, super minions down, you can easily just 1-4-0 and then, you know, control the area around blue and then restrict Baron. That is the safe play. That is the correct play. If you want to take things to a, you know, a little bit of a higher level, all things considered, then you can do this. Another scenario where you could probably do this is like as Kossadin. You couldn't do this on every single champion. You couldn't do this if you just have teleport on mid. You would need to fall under a very specific type of champion category in order to be able to get away with a rotation like this. But no matter what, the 1-4-0 is safer than, you know, the thing that Apdo just did. Apdo might die. No, doesn't die. And this is that kiting I'm talking about. Apdo actually wasn't even popping refillables until the very end. And now the game's going to end. Yeah, victory screen comes right now. All right, so that was the Apdo TF versus Ed Jayce mid-review.